I consider myself more of an educator than a business person. I run a business is because I want to reach as many people as possible.
Tell us more, how do you get into this job? What do you call this kind of consultant work? What's your achievement? What did you build?
So maybe I can start from the very beginning. I went to Price School, which is a feeder school for DPS and DBS. Went to DPS, that's in preparatory school. Back in those days, it's like a prestigious boys' school. Went straight to DBS. I'm in education, so I can say this. Nowadays, it doesn't work like this. Back in those days, 你有少少中產, you can help your kid get into like these schools with connections or whatnot. Not saying I got into like DBS fully because of connection. So I went through that, but I was really rebellious, especially up until like Form 2. I just needed a change. I asked my parents, can I go to the US? And I was sent to a boarding school in the middle of nowhere in Vermont.
Okay.
And that kind of changed my life around because I had some really good teachers who helped me recognize that I wasn't a screw up. Being in DBS is very exhausting and stressful if you are not talented. You constantly feel like I'm not an athlete. I'm still a short, chubby kid. Everyone's like someone, like a musician. Some people are really good at academics and I just didn't know what I was doing. In the States, the teachers I felt like cared more about you and your development. I found that I was particularly good at English and I was really into like English literature, politics and writing and all that. That just changed my whole life around. Fast forward college days, I ended up studying politics, international relations in college. Kind of going against my own instincts. I really wanted to study English literature, but I was like, dude, what am I gonna do? Teach English? You can't make money teaching English. So I was just like, I'll just do like international relations. I wanna be like in a think tank or work for a secret service. It sounds cool, right? I just really hated it doing that in Washington, D.C. I guess it fits my worldview. I'm quite an idealistic person. I want to somehow change the world or make a change, but I felt like I couldn't make a change in politics. So graduated, came back to Hong Kong. But my whole mentality growing up was give back to my family. I want to show at least my dad, who was a self-made entrepreneur, came to Hong Kong when he was like 5-6 years old. Was living with his uncle and he was a street hawker, selling posters in the street. Didn't finish high school. By age of 20, he was doing his own business in Tsim Sha Tsui. He's one of the first Chinese people to set up shop in Chongqing Mansion. He's my inspiration. Graduating, I realized he had put so many resources on me. And this is for later on. I also realized when I graduated that he was on the brink of bankruptcy, but he never told me. When I came back, I was gonna just look for a job. I'll just do whatever it takes. You grow up in like these schools and those circles. There's people currently our age that still don't have a job. Back then I was like, I'm not gonna be one of these people. It just so happened like I just applied to a job first week after graduation. It's like an educational consultancy. So guess what they did? They were helping kids enter like boarding school in the States. I went to a boarding school in the States. I was like, yeah, I want to make a change. I want to help the next generation. So I just applied. The boss actually hired me on the spot. Quickly, you get a lesson in terms of what corporate world is. And it was also a startup that was expanding. It was crazy. Like within a year's time, I felt like I had like 5 years of work experience. Back then I had like 12 cases, 12 kids to handle, and basically help them train their interview skills, manage their application essays, so we don't write for them. We have to coach them how to answer essay questions like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? But then you're also dealing with high school kids or middle school kids who don't know what they're doing. Just like me back then. So there's this sense of satisfaction when you're coaching these kids through basic stuff like introduce yourself. Their self-esteem can be like so low sometimes. They're like, I don't know, like there's nothing cool about me to share. And then you're coaching them through it. You help them basically realize who they are and help them articulate their life stories. So that's really fun. That's the most rewarding part. Still to this day. Obviously, you're also dealing with like not just one kid, 12 kids. You're also dealing with their parents who are ultra concerned for them to get into the top US boarding schools like Andover, Exeter. If they feel like the training or the materials that you're preparing for them along the way are according to their ideals, not maybe not subpar, they're gonna question you. You're just a fresh graduate, right? Like, so you don't know anything. So like, I guess like that was also tough. You just learn a lot. I was really grateful that I was in a company that was expanding. So I was like doing business trips in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, like the whole year. And then they also had this like extra service where during like Thanksgiving time, we would accompany our clients to the US to do like interviews with schools. So let's say a family, we book a bunch of interviews for the kid. They have their whole week booked out at, let's say like 10 schools, right? So 2 schools per day. So these schools would span from like maybe New York State, like Massachusetts, and then Connecticut, and down to like DC. So we plan the whole trip. I'm there to coach the kid along the way, like interview training, and then we check into like a different hotel each day. There's a driver. We're like doing a road trip, right? And after that week, you come back to Hong Kong, you're jet lagged, and then you still in your job. So that was like the most mind-blowing and like stressful and educating part of my life. But I tried to quit like after 6 months because just the pressure you get from the kid sometimes is rebellious. They're not doing what you want them to do. And then the parents are freaking out. And then your boss is like, so there were periods of time where I was like OTing like every day till like 10 p.m. then working on Saturday all day.
Do you think the pressure was more the contrast between when you're in university, you had your own schedule, you're doing whatever, mostly whatever you wanted to do, and then when you first got into a workforce, you have to follow orders, you're the most inexperienced one. People tend to take more time to finish a task compared to like more experienced seniors. Do you think it's probably those reasons?
Time management, just knowing what needs to be done when. Because I mean, like I tend to procrastinate till this day. But then back then, when you're a fresh graduate, you actually don't know what you're doing, right? You're getting training all along, but you're also like servicing already, right? You get hired so that you can contribute. You have to play the part. If your title is an educational consultant, you have to act like an educational consultant, meaning you have to be an expert in this field. You have to be convincing in the eyes of these kids and parents. But it's hard. You just graduated. So people are constantly doubting you. And sometimes you might be making mistakes, right? So everything combined, that makes it stressful. But it just takes time. If this is something that you really enjoy doing, there's gonna be bad things. There's always gonna be rewarding parts of the job. And then there's always gonna be stuff you have to deal with, like these parents, you have to do that. You just figure a way out. There's also like a lot of EQ training, how to be detached from the parents' comment. Just know that, dude, it's valid. Of course they're freaking out. They're paying 150K Hong Kong dollars for your service. They want results.
You graduated from uni, you got into your first job. You have been loving it since then.
Yeah.
How did you know that you love it? You haven't tried other types of work?
Yeah, I'm a very loyal, I'm lucky too.
Okay.
Because as I told you, when I was in high school, I was really into writing, reading, just anything to do with words. And this job let me have that creative output whenever I'm editing kids' essays and I'm coaching them. And then they end up getting into all these good schools. So later on, I also transferred to the university counseling department. I had a boss that was like not too hardworking. He made me read all of the department's essays. When I get into Carnegie Mellon or like Cornell, you kind of know what the product is like and how to get the kid to do that. And there's an immense satisfaction with that. Alongside with the personal growth, you see the kid go through and then you form these friendships with them. And then you realize that you're contributing to something. There's this satisfaction where you're not just molding this person's life, you're making them feel better after you do it. If you were not there, they would have screwed up their application or they would have made a wrong choice that they would regret. I don't think it's that important like rest of their lives, but it is like you can't go back in time. I knew that was for me.
How long did you work for that company before you decided to start your own business?
Worked for that company for 2 years.
You were 24? 23?
Yeah, I was 24. That was also a point where I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I was doing all of this stuff. On top of the counseling part, I was like going on these business trips to do sales, and I felt like I'm a top performer. I'm super passionate. And from a boss's point of view, you're lucky to have me because I really care. In any company, you quickly find out who doesn't belong and who belongs. And then, dude, I can be honest, I was still making 17K. And I remember like I was getting a raise and it was like 2K. I'm like, dude, I can't even like, sustain for a month. And then I was just frustrated. My dad was a big part of this. He just encouraged me to be like, look, you have nothing to lose. If you quit your job, you try out tutoring and you figure you can always fall back. You can go back and they'll still hire you. Growing up, my dad has been a huge influence, self-made man. He just pushed me to, look, you're good at tutoring. If counseling is hard, why don't we just dumb this down? Just do like one-on-one English tutoring. Can you do that? Can you charge like $200 per hour? And I was like young. I knew what I was kind of good at, what I wanted to do. I was like, screw it, I'll just quit. Obviously, it was really tough from the beginning. I rented this 100 square feet room opposite Maryknoll. It's in a really shady alley. I also put up a banner on the street. I designed it myself. It looks like crap. It's like red. I had a stupid, like, it was
What
like,
was it
but
called? What was it
it's
called?
called English Mentor.
Okay.
But the design was like, it's just a red banner with white words like English Mentor, like 英语教练. No clients though. So my dad encouraged me to go in front of schools at 7:30 a.m. in the morning and hand out pamphlets. He was actually there with me to do it. Right. And that's when I'm like, dude, I have to step up. One of the things when you start a business is you have ego in terms of what you think a business owner is doing, and the reality is that you have to do every freaking thing. Like, don't think that something is beneath you. I printed out my own pamphlets. Me looking back, they're not quality. But what makes it count is I did it, right? I printed them out. I was doing everything, right? Logistics, pushing carts and handing out flyers. It's funny, like I would go up to Kowloon Tong at night and I would hang these banners on Lan Gong. I think it's illegal, right? 2 days later, I received a phone call and this old lady, she's like, can I learn English from you?
Okay.
I'm like, that wasn't my target audience, but okay, fine. And then she ended up being my most like consistent clients.
Right.
I was also doing like 3 part-time jobs. I was part-timing at my former company. I was at this other center in Wan Chai. I also worked as a contractor for Kaplan. The earlier days, I would also take Sangwon Bozap. I would go all the way to Dongchong and I would charge only like $250 per hour. But you're just like doing that for experience and I'm testing my product. Fast forward 1 year, I was doing minimal marketing and my schedule from Mondays to Saturdays are all packed because you just put your head down and just start tutoring and then the results are good and then you get referrals.
How much were you making back then?
In the beginning, I was charging like $200 per hour and then I upped it to like $500 per hour.
Wow.
That's half of what I charge right now for tutoring. If my schedule is filled out, it's like comfortable 60K.
And you're like 26 years old.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money for 26 years old.
You also built this. I learned a way to make a living. It's the process of doing that. Even today, if my business fails, I can still go back to those days and I'll work harder. I can still do that.
So after being a tutor, so you went from making 17K, 24, and then bumped it up to 60, 70K when you're 26, 27. And then when did you start your education consultant from tutoring?
It got a bit like stagnant. After a year and a half, 2 years, you're still tutoring. Mondays to Saturdays, you get a bit tired and it's a bit repetitive. The opportunity came when one of my previous clients that I had helped their kid get into a boarding school. So he flew from Shanghai to come visit me and he's like, my kid trusts you only. Help us plan for university entry. Okay. And we'll pay the same fees. Then I was like, dude, wasn't even doing marketing. I'll take it. That kid ended up getting to UCLA. Oh, there's a funny story actually. I was on a junk trip and there's this guy that was like, hey, what do you do? We're drinking a bit. I'm like, I'm a college counselor. He's like, oh, my brother is applying to college. So I helped his brother with a huge discount. He ended up getting into Harvard.
Wow.
So he was a genius kid from Shatin College. I have all the stuff that a lot of huge firms don't have, that which is like reputation and brand name. That gave me confidence. And I thought it was time for me to rent an actual office to do this counseling service. I also asked for help from some of my ex-colleagues who were doing freelance, kind of partnering up with them a bit.
Yeah, that's smart. When was this?
2017.
What's your accomplishment now?
To be honest, I considered myself more an educator than a business person. The reason why I run a business is because I want to reach as many people as possible. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about like revenue or numbers.
Okay.
You can figure that out. But nowadays we help around 100 kids per year to get into international schools. And then I myself still do university admissions counseling. I roughly take around like 15 to 20 kids per year. And on top of that, we have a team to do English tutoring one-on-one. We have around, I don't know, roughly like 20, 30 students. Our cheapest consultation service for international school would be 40K. University counseling, we're charging around roughly 140K per case right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to build that size of portfolio?
Quite a few years. Don't forget, I survived COVID. Really, just recent years, these 2 years, that it's really exploded. The volume of customers took me 6 years, maybe, to really build this like solid foundation.
You bought a place recently, right?
So I bought an office finally. I don't see it as that much of an investment. Real estate is really bad. Just looking at the next 2 years, office, it's gonna go even lower. There's a lot of empty offices out there.
Yes.
And people are turning into WeWork or whatever. A lot of businesses are moving to China, especially in my industry. I'd rather do that than pay rent. Been paying rent for what, 7-8 years. Sometimes it's like the air conditioner breaks down and then you have to pay half of it. I'm like,
Wait, what?
yeah, some contracts are like this.
Oh, wow.
You know? So it depends on when you rent the place, whether you really need the place. The landlord sometimes has that in the clause and you end up have to fix up their place for them. And just not ideal if you're renting a place, a lot of stuff. You can't make it fit your own purpose.
Buying your own commercial place is a pretty good milestone, I'll say.
I don't know. I'm just still letting it sink in because I know how much work there is. Dude, I've moved offices, like how many offices have I moved? 3 places. And every time, even though I'm renting, like it's like 装修, then like just 佈置啲位, and then everything. It's like a lot of work.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this like podcast things. It's not really to make money on YouTube, but it's more for me to network myself to, I guess, like-minded people. Learn from people like yourself how to build a business. I think you're the only friend that I have in education consulting, which is quite unique. Quite unique. I know a lot of tutors, but not people who help others to study overseas. Wanted to know a bit more about what's next. How do you scale the business?
I'm trying to slowly scale it. I'm a perfectionist, and as I told you, I'm also an educator first. Having been in the industry, there's giants in the industry that I'm fighting against day-to-day basis. Kaplan, The Edge. Edge is a kind of like large corporate company, also in Vietnam, Singapore, whatnot. Arch Education, owned by Zhao Daifeng. They're like much larger scale. How we've been able to survive is be more attentive to our clients, provide better service, more premium, which is very labor intensive and very people oriented. I work in an industry where the tutors or the teachers or consultants really matter. That's also been like one of the pain points, like the harder things for us to do is hire people who love doing this kind of work and want to advance their career.
How do you make sure that they ramp up to the level that you want? And you mentioned that you're a perfectionist.
Yeah, you have to lead by example. So that's why I'm still like involved in tutoring, teaching. That's why I pump out like so much like YouTube videos on my channel. I have to be there to show them what a professional educational consulting field should be like. Because I also feel like it's a dying profession.
Why is that?
Especially in Hong Kong, because big companies, they sacrifice the quality of the educational advice for like volume of clients. So there's really big companies in China. They're basically the cowboys of my industry. They charge way cheaper than us. 但係我幫你報100間學校啦咁樣。But the quality is bad, and I'm constantly trying to be like, we don't want to be like them. So I'm trying to figure out a path for us to like scale.
You mentioned your work is mainly different in an area where you provide higher quality, and through provide higher quality, you sacrifice lower quantity. Hiring 2 more people would ease off part of your work, right?
Yeah.
Which part of it?
The service that we have most volume in, like which is international school admissions counseling.
Okay.
Because we help kids from age 3 years old up until 17 years old to get into kindergartens, primary school, and up until high school in Hong Kong. The volume, the demand is bigger in this area. To get into let's say Victoria kindergarten, it's super competitive. It's almost like 1,000 kids are fighting for one spot.
Dude, I have no idea.
Yeah. It also comes with 呢幾年 China's doing the 高才移民. But even without that, there's been a huge trend of local parents who want to send their kids to international schools. Obviously, there's been new schools in Hong Kong, but they're always aiming for like ESF and like those top ones.
Right.
So hence they need like training from us. Say you're transferring from local school to international school. There has to be a gap in terms of like English level, right? So what we do is we not just like help you manage the whole application process, we also teach the parent how to answer certain questions during like their statements to fit with the school's value. But we coach the kid, and hopefully through a short period of time, we're able to at least make them presentable for those entry tests and interviews, and hopefully they can get admitted.
It's a very long process for the students. I guess longer.
Depends on timeline. There's still parents who are like, it's June and they want to get into school like this fall in August. So it's like, dude, if you sign up, like we have to get everything done in 3 weeks. So it can be stressful in terms of like, we have to get this done no matter what.
How are the success rate with you, working with you?
We say that we're 100%, especially for international schools entry. We give our advice in terms of, okay, based on your level, we can apply to these schools. We've never failed a case according to that. Obviously, sometimes parents would have a different expectation than your assessment. So in those cases, if according to our advice, you need a school that has English support, but then you're trying to apply for GSIS, we can still do it for you, but I'll warn you all the time that, dude, you're likely not even going to be considered. But if you want to use our service, we can still help you out.
How do you separate your time? What's your day-to-day like?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I guess the most consistent would be my regular like servicing amount of tutoring sessions I do each day. I have time allocated to do my consultation, like kind of reply to parents' messages. Also, we have like staff meetings where I manage like everything. Go over each case, what's going on, are their parents complaining, what's the next step. Other than that, I allocate like time to do like business administrative things, planning, marketing. During the day, I would say more like servicing. Like a business person, your mind keeps running. Nighttime, maybe after gym, I'd be focusing on how can I make my business better. So the ideas that go with like YouTube channel stuff, how to grow my business, Google ads or business partnerships. When I have alone time, that's kind of what I do.
How would someone fresh get into this kind of industry? What do you suggest them to start out with?
Actually, if you're just fresh, just know what this is something that you really want. If you say that you want to make an impact towards the next generation, are you willing to take the heat from parents and do all that? Because there's tremendous like opportunities and growth. Just think about the numbers. But are you willing to sacrifice like your time? It's just, so for me, it's just opportunity cost. But a lot of people who are passionate about education might not necessarily want to put in that.
From what I hear, there are a lot of people who wants to be in the education industry, but most of them want to work in the school.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, people can say that they say whatever. You have to, it comes down to like when you're working, you're willing to learn, all that stuff. Especially if you're working in a smaller company, you have to be a team player. You have to be okay with toughing it out, not having very clearly specified duties. And sometimes you might have to help out like another colleague. I'm not an expert in this. Like that's why I like try to say that I'm an educator and more of a business person. But the people that have worked for me, there's staff that's worked for me for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And I've changed their life around. Kind of similar story as mine, but it's luck sometimes. You find like the right person.
Thanks for this.
No problem. No. You're actually a pretty good interviewer.
You think so?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's my second time.